My name is Dr. Hung William Song, and I want to talk to you about an observation that I had this weekend about the coronavirus. I think that we are going to come out of this lockdown, quarantine universe that we've been in since the beginning of the year much sooner than we think. Okay, and I'm saying that because of what I observed and what I'm of the data that I'm seeing coming out from around the world. Okay, so this Labor Day weekend, I was down at the Jersey Shore with my family, and I saw a lot of people down there. Some people were wearing masks and social distancing, but for the most part, people were just not social distancing. Nobody was wearing masks. Young people were in the bars, hanging out, shouting, way too close to each other in large groups. And first, it made me really angry to see this, because I'm thinking these kids are going to go back home. They're going to bring the virus home. They're going to give it to their family, their elderly relatives, and their co-workers. They're going to give it to their children and spread it in the schools. And we're just going to go right back to where we were back in April, when we were all locked down and couldn't even go to the grocery store without fearing for our lives. And I was working at a COVID hospital at that time, watching people sick and dying, and people just coming in one after the other. And I just did not want to see that happen again. So that's what made me really angry. But at the same time, I was getting some news feeds from and reading about some data that was coming out from around the world. And I'm going to talk to you about one particular thing that really caught my interest and made me kind of sit back and think about this in a different way. And after thinking about it for a while, I realized that, hey, you know what? Things are not as bad as it seems. There's a lot of politics, a lot of people fighting with each other, wear a mask, don't wear a mask, and I don't think we need to do that. I think if we understand what's happening right now and realize how we can come out of this much sooner than we think, with the least number of lives lost, that is our goal, and that should be our goal no matter which side of the political spectrum that we are on. Okay, so let me begin by sharing a brief presentation with you, and I'm going to be talking now about herd immunity. Okay, you've heard that term being thrown around. What does herd immunity mean? Well, herd immunity is when enough people have developed an immunity to a virus or a disease to the point where it's not going to really spread as rapidly or at all, okay, because people in the population are immune. And that can happen in two ways. One, everybody just gets sick, and the people who are susceptible will die. Others will get sick and get over it and be immune, and others will catch it and not get sick but still be immune. And if enough people developed an immunity to the virus, then the virus cannot hop from one person to another before finding a new host to infect. And that's the only way the virus can survive, is by continuously finding new hosts to infect. Otherwise, it will just die off, because the current host will either die or just kill the virus, and it cannot pass its genes on and continue to survive. So that's what herd immunity is. Okay, so what's happening now? We are in a race. The whole world is in a race to come up with this vaccine so that we can build this herd immunity. If we can find a vaccine that protects us from this virus and immunize everybody, or at least the people most susceptible, we can stop this virus and go on with our lives again. And that's why all around the world, we have companies trying desperately to come up with a vaccine. Okay, so this is great that the scientists around the world and the companies around the world are working so hard to come up with a vaccine, but it also makes me worry because in the rush to come up with the vaccine, we may come up with something that's safe, that's not safe, or something that doesn't work. And also, there is a profit motive. Okay, whoever comes up with the virus first is going to cash in, and it's going to be huge. Okay, because they're going to be producing something that the whole world is going to need. And so there's a lot of controversy about that and a lot of concern, quite frankly, because with this kind of profit motive, there's going to be a lot of temptation to cut corners. Okay, if you're the first and people are willing to gamble the lives of millions of people, because if you rush out a vaccine and in the worst case scenario, the vaccine is not safe, if it ends up killing people or making people sick or causing new problems, that is going to be a huge problem because so many people are going to be given this vaccine and suffer from the consequences. Well, the other alternative is if it is safe, but if it doesn't work. If it doesn't work, you may say that we're no worse off than we were before, but actually, if you come out with a virus that's not effective or only marginally effective, then what will happen is it will make people lose confidence in a vaccine. So when a real vaccine that works and is safe actually comes out, people are not going to want to take it because they're going to be jaded. They're going to think that, oh, this is another fake vaccine that doesn't work, or they're going to be afraid because they're going to be afraid of potential side effects from the vaccine. So, you know, we're still, you know, putting a lot of faith in our pharmaceutical companies, in our government, in our scientists, in coming up with this vaccine, and I think they should keep working on it. But we have to do it safely, okay? And to do it safely, it's going to take more than a month or two. It could take years to come up with a real vaccine. Okay, so in the meantime, this is what I wanted to talk about. Okay, what is a vaccine, and how can we, as a society, protect ourselves from disease without having to rely on the pharmaceutical companies, and how does nature protect us? Okay, so let's just go back and start with how vaccines were first discovered. The first vaccine was discovered by Edward Jenner in 1796. Okay, so how did he discover it? Well, prior to vaccines being available, prior to his observations on that led to the discovery of a vaccine, people were aware that people who have been infected tend not to get infected again. So the concept of immunity to a disease was present before vaccines. In fact, there was a practice called variolation, where doctors would intentionally infect people with the smallpox. What they would do is they would take a pustule of an infected person, take a little needle and scratch that pustule, and then scratch another person with that, and giving them smallpox. But it's a small inoculation of smallpox. So when you get smallpox in that way, people tend to have a better chance of surviving it. So they were willing to get sick intentionally in order not to get sick naturally, in which case hoping that you have a better chance of survival. Okay, so obviously that is not the optimal way to develop an immunity. And what Edward Jenner observed were that milkmaids developed a disease similar to smallpox called cowpox. It was very common disease among the milkmaids. And he also observed that these milkmaids tended not to get smallpox. They tended to be immune from smallpox. So he deduced that cowpox, which is kind of related to smallpox but not lethal, gave these milkmaids immunity to smallpox, which is lethal. So he did something that we would never do or allow anyone to do now because it's unethical. But what he did was he took his gardener's 9-year-old son, James Phelps, and he infected the kid intentionally with cowpox. He took a little scraping of a person with known infected with cowpox, and he infected the boy with the cowpox like they were doing with the smallpox. So his theory was that if this kid got infected with cowpox, he would not get smallpox. And and the boy did develop cowpox and survived as expected. But then he exposed the kid to smallpox. Okay, so this is the crazy part. He exposed his 9-year-old kid, his gardener's son, to smallpox, and to see if he would get infected, and the boy did not get infected, thank God. And from that, Edward Jenner realized that by infecting people with a related virus, a weaker virus, he could help people develop an immunity to the more deadly smallpox. And that is how smallpox vaccine was developed, and that was the basis of other vaccinations that were developed. And there's different types of vaccines. Some vaccines have live virus, like the polio vaccine, just a weakened version of it, and some vaccines are just particles of the virus. So they're actually dead virus that still helps people develop immunity to the virus. And then there are synthetic vaccines that can be made. Okay, so smallpox was actually declared to have been eradicated. The World Health Assembly in 1980 declared smallpox to be eradicated from the world. So the only existence of smallpox, they have vials locked up very securely, hopefully very securely, at the CDC in the United States, and the Russians have a sample of smallpox vaccine. That's the only place it exists. Nobody has been infected with smallpox in the whole world in decades. So that's the story of vaccines. So now I'm gonna just bring it back to this coronavirus. So we've been focusing on how coronavirus affects different people, okay? And the coronavirus tends to have, it tends to infect some populations more severely than others. In fact, some races, African Americans and Hispanics, have been especially hit hard. A disproportionate number of people dying from COVID-19 were African American and Hispanic in this country anyway. And so we're focusing on how how different genetic makeup of people can affect how they respond to the virus. And that's been a topic of a lot of discussion, because we're thinking, okay, and we've been seeing this from the beginning. Some people get the virus and they're unscathed by it. In fact, some people don't even show any symptoms, but when you test them, they test positive for the virus, and they seem to be um, they seem not to get sick from it at all. Some people get a mild illness. Some people get severe illness but survive, but other people get get COVID-19 and they just don't survive. And even seemingly healthy people and young people, and that's what's been so scary about this. So we've been focusing on trying to determine who's at most risk. So the elderly, people with diabetes and heart disease, smokers, obesity, and even blood type has been mentioned. There's some data showing that people with O-type blood may have a less chance of contracting COVID-19. So there's clearly genetic factors involved in how we respond to infection from the virus. Okay. Now, what we have not been looking that closely, or there has not been a lot of talk about, is the difference in the genetics of the virus itself. Okay, so we've been hearing that the virus is mutating. In fact, by the mutations have been occurring, and by the time that it reached the United States, there was a Chinese version and a European version. The European version had mutated to a more deadly version that came and hit us and killed all those people in April, and that was, very scary, because it seemed like the virus had mutated to become more deadly. Okay, so, but what we're finding now, and this is a very interesting report that came out of England, in the UK, from contact tracing and just, a lot of very diligent legwork. They're now reporting some data that in UK, the mortality rate, the infection fatality rate, which means the percent of people with the infection who die from it, is now, in August, was 1%. Okay, in April it was 18%. So in April, 18% of the people who contracted the virus in the UK died, and in August, 1% of them died. So there are many different factors that contribute to this data. Okay, so one very obvious thing is we're doing more testing, and we're finding more people with the infection. So back in April, when we didn't have the tests available, we were only testing people who were more sick. So obviously, we're going to have a higher percentage of those people die. And now that we have the tests are readily available, we're finding more asymptomatic people who are not as sick. And so because of the larger number of people who are not as sick being counted, and the percentage of people who are dying from it will naturally go down. And the other reason is that we have better treatment now. Back in April, we did not know anything, pretty much. At that time, we thought steroids were dangerous because there was a study that came out early on that said steroids were causing more deaths. So we avoided steroids. And now we know that steroids are actually life-saving. if given at the right time. Okay, so as well as some medications that have now been approved that are being used, remdesivir and other things that we've discovered about it is helping people survive this virus better. Okay, but is that the whole story? Well, if we look very closely at the numbers, it doesn't account for it does account for some of the decrease in the mortality rate, but it doesn't explain the whole story. And what we're realizing now is that there are different strains of the virus going around, and the predominant strain that's going around in the UK right now is called the D614G variant. And it turns out that this variant is not as deadly as the variant that was going around in April. So, so we're finding out that the virus itself is becoming weaker genetically. So how is that happening? How is the virus, survival of the fittest, natural selection, wouldn't it select out the strongest viral strain and make that survive over the weaker viral strain? Well, I mean, at first it might seem that way, but if you really look at what a successful virus is, a successful virus is not a virus that kills the host. Okay, if you are a virus and you kill the host rapidly, you're a very dangerous virus, but that's not good for you if you're the virus, because you need the host to be alive and spread your genes in order for you to continue to survive and multiply. So a viral strain that kills its hosts, like the strain that was going around in New York back in April, that virus is not a very strong virus in terms of its own survival, because the virus killed the host. So when the host dies, the virus dies with the host. The only way that the virus can continue to survive if it leaves the host and infects somebody else. But these people are so sick that, and everyone can see how sick they are, so no one's going to go near them without the proper PPEs. So they're not likely to infect other people. So the virus is going to die with them. And the viral strain that makes people really sick but doesn't kill them, that also is not the most optimal scenario for the virus, because if the victim is sick and showing a lot of symptoms, then people are going to avoid them, and the people who get sick are going to avoid other people, and they know that they're infectious, so they're going to be good citizens and not go around infecting other people. So the viral strain that gets spread the most are the viral strains that do not kill their host, and the viral strains that tend not to make them so sick. In fact, the viral strains that infect people without even causing any symptoms are going to be the most successful virus, because these viruses can infect people and their hosts will unknowingly go about their lives and infect other people and continue to spread this viral strain. But fortunately for us, the viral strain that is being spread in this way tends to be the weaker virus in terms of lethality. Okay, so the less deadly virus, the virus that does not make us as sick, is the strain that seems to be circulating now. Now, make no mistake, the deadly strain is still out there, okay? But what we've been doing with our social distancing, with our shutdowns, as much as we hated it, it did work, okay? The number, you know, if you look at the number of people getting infected, especially around the country, you know, it started in New York, New Jersey, Seattle, and certain hot spots, and now we're clear, but then some of the southern states, Florida, South Carolina, Georgia, you know, those Texas, those were hot spots a month ago. And now the numbers there are going down. Now the numbers are going up in the Midwest. So the total number of infections are going up and down, and it seems like we're getting nowhere. But I would argue that we are actually, we have been very successful with what we have been doing. As much as people have been complaining and resisting and fighting, the efforts that we have put in was not for nothing, because we have managed to suppress the spread of the deadly variant of this virus. And that's why people are not dying like they were back then. The numbers are going up, and it's scary because the numbers keep going up, but that may not necessarily be a bad thing, as long as the number of people that are really sick or the number of people that are dying are continuing to decrease. I think it shows that our efforts have been successful. So what I'm saying at this point is that right now we need to keep up with what we're doing, okay? And don't get too don't get too angry and frustrated and fight with your neighbors who are, not cooperating with the social distancing, because it's not as dangerous now as it was before, okay? So I think we can cut them a little slack. And I'm not saying that we should all stop the social distancing, because it's still too soon, and the deadly virus, the deadly strain can just reemerge, and it can just rear its ugly head back up again. And that's what we're afraid of may happen in the fall as people spend more time indoors. But if the strain that's going around, if I'm right, if what's going around right now is the non-lethal version, then we may not see that second spike of deaths that we were so afraid of, okay? The infection rate, it will go up for sure. There will be a second wave of infection, but if we can avoid the second wave of death, isn't that what we're really shooting for? And I think what we're doing now, what we have been doing, was not for nothing. It's worked, okay? So let's keep doing what we're doing, because this is my theory. I think just like when Edward Jenner realized that cowpox can give people immunity to smallpox, I think that this D614G variant, or something even less lethal, even something that's if we can find a non-lethal strain of this virus, we could use that as a vaccine before the real vaccine comes out, before an actual vaccine comes out. So, but we're not there yet. We need to isolate this strain. We need to isolate a non-lethal strain of the virus, and we need to show that it doesn't have long-term effects, okay? And we need to show that this non-lethal virus version can give us immunity to the lethal viral version. And if we can get there, which I think is much more realistic than coming up with the vaccine before the winter, I think that we may have a possible solution. So what happens? Should we be doing coronavirus parties um, like the uh, chickenpox parties that were kind of popular when I was a kid anyway? At that time, we did not have a vaccine to chickenpox. So what a lot of parents did was when uh, when somebody got infected with chickenpox, you would actually send your kids, parents would send their kids over to play with the kids who had chickenpox so that they can contract chickenpox. And they did that because if you catch chickenpox as an adult, you're much more likely to die from chickenpox. Chickenpox, it could be deadly in adults, whereas in children, it is rarely lethal. So parents would purposely have their children get infected with chickenpox so that later in life they will be immune and hopefully not get chickenpox as an adult, in which case they could die from it. Now, the problem with that is that the chickenpox virus doesn't ever really go away. It lives in the roots of your nerves so that you can later in life develop shingles from the chickenpox virus. So, and shingles is no fun. It's very painful, and some people can actually die from shingles as well. So, um, so now we have the vaccine, and the vaccine is a better option because it's not a live virus. So, so the person develops immunity to the virus, but doesn't get the later side effects of the virus that you would get from the natural infection. So ideally, we still want to have a good vaccine come out so that we can protect our population from this virus. But for the time being, um, regardless of whether we decide um, when we find a non-lethal strain to decide to intentionally allow people to get infected, it doesn't matter because it's kind of happening anyway, naturally. Um, young people are kind of, spreading this less lethal strains of the virus around, and hopefully they will unintentionally develop that herd immunity that we've been looking for. Um, I would prefer that this happens intentionally with a plan because even though it's happening naturally, and I'm hopeful that this will kind of avert the disaster that we were afraid would happen with the second wave, um, that deadly strain is still out there. And if we're not careful, it can come back, okay? But I just wanted to share that information with you because um, we're in a place right now where people are feeling so hopeless. And I feel that this is nature, God telling us, just, saving us from ourselves, because despite all the fighting, um, all the um, all the politics and all the false reports and everything that's coming out, um, nature's just kind of taking care of us, So I think we need to everybody just needs to chill and realize that we need to continue to work together, and we can come out of this sooner. And if we do it together intentionally, we can come out of it sooner than later. But even despite all that we're doing to sabotage, I think that this virus is going to kind of burn itself out sooner than later. That's my hope. That's my prayer. And this one final thing that I also noticed is that in some colleges, instead of sending the students home when they get sick, they're actually they have arrangements with local hotels to kind of let their students recover together in a hotel and quarantine rather than going home and spreading the virus. And I think that's a great idea. I think that's that way kids can go to school, and if they get sick, they can recover without spreading it. Um, but these are the kind of ideas that can help us get out of this with the least number of people dying. And I think that we can do it. I think we're there. I just wanted to let you guys know that this is happening, and let's work together. God bless you. Stay safe. I'm Dr. Hung William Song, and hopefully we'll see you soon. You can go to wipecovid.com for more information on the coronavirus. Take care, everybody.